Hello, welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings, and we're doing another champion, a good champion on Rise to War. We've got our guest Jethros with us, and also, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps out the algorithms. And down there at the bottom, we'll have a link to Jethro's channel as well if you guys want to check that out. So he'll be putting some videos on there too. All right, guys, so we're going to talk about Haldir today. We'll go straight into it. So first things first, let's just quickly talk about what is his stats he likes and stuff. And Jethros is, we don't use, either of us don't use this guy very much, but Jethro knows about him a lot. So let you take it away, Jethros.
Yeah, so Haldir's really good with ranged units, really strong in the early parts of the match, and has a lot of abilities that can benefit beasts in different compositions like that. And so it just depends on what you have access to is probably going to help you make your decision on how you want to build him. But arguably, you know, just like any other commander, it really matters more what respect level you have him than anything else.
Is he's might focused in speed, right? That's what it looks like. Like he's got a lot of speed.
Yeah, he doesn't really benefit very much from focus.
Yeah.
He gets a little bit from it, but not as much as you would think.
All right, sweet. So why don't we do it? Let's break it down into like, so if you're respect 1 with him, if you're a new player and you just got him, and you're only respect 1, what would you think the best setup of the first 2 trees would be?
I think you would be maxing guide first, and then you would be putting 1 point. You could even put it really early into the March Warden of Lorien because it gives one of your units avoidance for the next damage received on just putting 1 point into it. So that one's really good. So I would probably max guide, and then I would go for armed escort. And foresight is really good too, but it does depend on what type of enemy you're facing. One thing that's really important about Haldir is he's one of the better commanders for taking Oathbreakers because this foresight ability does allow you to hit through their avoidance of physical damage. It'll have about a 70% chance to hit through in the first 4 rounds. And since their defenses are so low, it's going to make them really weak.
Yeah, and that's because they can't be hit by physical attacks normally, right? So Haldir's a good counter to Oathbreakers units.
Yep.
Yeah, sweet. And then so armed escort, and then March Warden. Then so if you're using those, you're probably not going to put a lot into elite, right? Unless you have extra points to start buffing up his focus.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about this, and I haven't really mentioned these in our other videos, but the thing to understand about these types of skills where it increases your might or your focus or whatever by a certain percent, you're going to get a lot more out of this when you have really good gear for that person. For that commander. But if you don't have very good gear, if you're just using blues or just base level purples, or maybe you have like 1 gold on there, it's not really going to give you as much benefit as it would if you're getting 3, 4, 5 stars in some of these purples.
And like, yeah, rather than like, it's probably better to put it in cold weak or something, right?
Yeah.
Just extra damage flat out.
Yeah, they're just, let's put it this way, they're never good in the early game, but once you get a commander to like level 40 plus, and it might be worth considering to get some extra damage squeezed out or get some extra healing squeezed out, depending on what type of commander it is.
There's like my one Gimli who like has like 60 extra might, 70 extra might from items, then that might be a little bit more helpful to have a percent increase like that. Yeah. All right. So now if you have respect 3, would you still trait him similarly, or would you go into Sylvan Elf? Sylvan Elf.
I would go into Sylvan Elf if for 2 reasons. I would go into Sylvan Elf if you have access to Eagles or Bjornings because the beast training is really, really good for them. But I don't want to underestimate how amazing Forest Agility is. I mean, the chance to attack twice per round
it's slightly covered for
is huge. So what it is there's a percent chance of attacking twice per round. It's 2.9 right now for the first level, but you know, multiply that by 7 and you're getting basically like 21% chance of attacking twice. And you have 10 rounds. So, you know, you're going to be doing that at least 2 or 3 times, which if you get them early and it stacks with having guide, then, oh my goodness, you're just going to decimate people.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's why he's a popular hero. I noticed when we were in our last season, most all of the elf faction of Lothlorien were using Haldir. Because they had Bjornings and elves.
Him early, he's easy to power up to get your respect for, and he has a lot of synergy with their tier 3, and and they had eagles. They were just all over the place last season.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you can see why he's a strong hero. So then again, so we'll go on the last level now. Respect 5. Let's say you can get to the last part of the tree with Galadrim. So what would be your ideal build, do you think, for let's say you're using archers, not beasts. Let's say we're using archers, right?
If we're using archers, I would do 5 point or all the points into Galadrium. I would do that first. And then I would do 1 point in the March Warden of Lorien. And then I would max out Sylvan Elf and Forest Agility like equally. So I would do 2 point Sylvan Elf, 1 point Forest Agility, 2 point Sylvan Elf, 1 point Forest Agility.
Back and forth. Okay.
And then once that's done, I would put the rest of the points in Guide.
Into Guide down here.
And I think you would have just enough to do that. If there's any left over after that, I would decide between Armed Escort and Shield Training.
Shield Training is the top right. Wait, where is that? Oh,
Shield
right.
Training is
Got
under
it.
Galadrim. Yeah.
Got it. Right. Okay, down here.
And then I like to think
range
that
unit defense.
The Fortify, for example, which is really good while defending and reducing the physical damage. Most of the time, if you're using ranged for him, you won't really use him for defense quite as much. I think you would be using him more for a defensive build. You would probably go for more commander damage and healing, which I mean maybe we could talk about what that build would look like. But you would go for tanky units and a little bit of like sustain and damage from himself.
So that would be like a ranged build. And then let's say we won't talk about beasts yet, but let's talk about if you're gonna do a tank one then.
Yeah, so if you're gonna do a tank one, I would still because you're gonna have to put the points into Galadrium to get Fortify. I would definitely do that first, and then what you would do though is you would have like a little bit of a heavier front line. Most of the time you would do like somewhere around 35-40% melee or tank front line, and then the rest would be ranged. But with this, I would say to do it more 50-50 or even 60-40, where you're doing 60% as your front line and 40% is just a little bit of backline damage. But you're getting a lot of more defense from Fortify from the physical side of things. And then what you would do is you would max out March Warden of Lorien, and you would get like Cold a Week, and you would max out Guide, and you would get Armed Escort to heal up and do some extra damage that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really know if I would go for the Sylvan Elf, giving the additional physical or poison damage, or physical and poison damage, but it depends on how much focus you have on him. And in this build, you might think about getting a little bit more focus and speed rather than having might, because you're trying to be a little bit more defensive. Your healing from Armed Escort is going to scale off of focus, and your poison damage from Sylvan Elf, if you were to go for that, would be focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's definitely important then at that point. This guy's he has a lot of diverse what he can do,
like
even with armor.
If you start leveling them from the beginning of the game, you have a lot of flexibility based on what you need out of your commanders, because as we're noticing, I think a lot more people are recognizing this about Season 2. You can really only keep up with maybe 3 or 4 commanders at getting them experience and levels while you're trying to level up throughout the season. And so you can't manage really more than that, or you're just falling behind with your strongest guys. So,
and then like at the end of the game, once we're all maxed out, you can sort of add 1 or 2 other heroes. But even then, even with max barracks, you really can only have, when you're level 50 heroes, like 4 or 5 heroes with full groups.
Yeah, if you think about like having
reinforcements
each one, then yeah.
Yeah. So wow, we covered so 2 different builds, and then if you were say we're doing a Bjorn and Eagle build, it's pretty probably self-explanatory. Probably use beast training, right? It's going to be more of a defensive build.
You would have to do Sylvan Elf, and you would have to do beast training, and then it's kind of hard to say, but I think that you might still go Galadrium and Fortify, and because if you could use that for also, it works really well defensively, because HP restoring like each round is just really good, and they would be your frontliners, your Eagles, your Bjorns, and then you would have some ranged units in the back. Maybe you could do Bow Knights, but probably I think people underestimate how good the Sentinels are for actually dealing damage, and if you have a couple melee frontliners, they're hopefully not going to be getting hit as much. They're just really weak to the Rangers. What are those things called? The Dunadines.
Oh yeah, the Dunadine. Yeah, because they could just shoot over people. Though of course that gets counteracted if you say you're playing with, like, we'll go talk about him later, but Legolas, right? Because he's got the and so does Gimli, the elf friend thing where the dwarves can taunt. That counteracts that ability, right?
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
Anyway, we'll keep that for another video. Well, we did it. Is there anything else you want to mention on Haldir? Or is that...
No, that's just my 2 cents on him.
Yeah, my big thing to add too, from now that I've listened to the view, is with this is items too. Like, that's gonna be huge, because really you're gonna be able to switch up between focus and might with this guy, which is very interesting, because most characters you can't do that with quite as well. But he adds a lot of abilities. Like Armed Escort does focus a lot of stats, but then you go into, you know, like Cole, and these are going to be might. You know, he even has a might and focus increase with a lead, and then he also has poison damage from focus with that. But he's a commander, so he's going to be doing damage, physical damage with March Warden, and he does get focus from that too, interestingly enough, when you max it out. So yeah, also guide, man, that while damage is increased, the army gains stun immunity. That's freaking amazing. Oh my gosh, for that 2 rounds. Whew. That's really good. Especially, that'd probably be very good against the Witch King, because I was looking at him the other day, and doesn't he have a stun? Well, his army gets it, though. He doesn't get it. So
yeah, but
I think he stuns.
He gets the stun from the army. Then
that's true.
I think the Witch King has the Nazgul Screech that does like a stun from him.
Yeah. I think he hurts the enemy hero too, though. But I guess you could use that item. But we'll talk about the Witch King maybe in the future. We'll do some Witch King ones too. But anyway, guys, we'll end it right there. Thanks for joining us, Jethros, and your awesome input. Jethros is an expert now. We all started this game at the same time, and Jethros is the one that's like been doing all the studying. I've just been kind of like, dwarves! Just like all the dwarves I know. Yeah.
Science.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you for joining us, guys. I'm your host and guide, Zolan Iron Shield, as always, and this is Jethros. Again, check out his channel and link, and we'll see you in the next episode of Voice of the Rings. Later.